Inside BBI with John and Eric begins now.
All right, welcome back to a Saturday morning edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. Eric, we're going to skip a lot of the normal stuff, drinking wise. It's an unsweetened iced tea with a little bit of lemon juice. So there you go. Stick it to my plan. So we've got a lot going on. Let's recap real quick. First, I'll tell everybody, and then we're going to recap. We held it because I wanted to wait to make sure 100% I knew that they were making it. At 9:45, we should have Jordan Raanan of ESPN is going to join us. And then at 10:15, we're going to have Patricia Traina is going to be joining us. So we're going to cover kind of their thoughts on looking forward. So, Eric, so far, kind of some updates on what's happening and what we've seen so far. And I guess we're freaking people out because we flipped sides for them on a Saturday morning.
We know they cut Bobby Okereke. We were live last time was that being recorded? I don't remember that last
show. We were live. We were live.
Bobby Okereke's gone. They re-signed Gunnar Olszewski. They cut James Hudson, and they have restructured. Looks like a pay cut. It's an actual pay cut for Devin Singletary. So here we go. It's coming fast and furious. 3 of the moves so far sort of fall in line with your plan that you posted earlier about getting the Giants in better salary cap shape. Hudson was obvious. Okereke was obvious. I think most of us thought Devin Singletary was going to be cut, but he took a pay cut. I don't think people should read too much into that because it was a pay cut. He's still going to be relatively easy to cut if they need to. So I think that helps, and they do need depth going into the offseason in camp in case somebody gets hurt. Scadaboo's coming off an injury, that situation. So that's what I think we're going to continue to see moves. We may see somebody like Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, or Brian Burns restructured. There was a fantastic guest on John Schmelk's show on Giants.com. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend watching it. He had somebody on that used to be a former agent who does the free agent stuff, I think, for CBS. Really went into the contracts, really went into the free agents like John and I are going to be talking about today, and went into the numbers. And he specifically mentioned those 3 as obvious candidates that have restructured contracts for if the Giants are trying to create more cap space. But here we are on March 7th. Illegal tampering begins in 2 days. I expect we'll see more stuff today, possibly today, tomorrow, and then it's going to get crazy, I think, starting the 9th.
Yeah, I think right at noon, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen for a lot of people. Let's be honest. They call it legal tampering. It's been illegally being done for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Right. That's been going on. If you catch me looking to the left, I'm checking, keeping up on if anything gets thrown out there immediately. I want to make sure that we can address it as it happens. I think, someone asked in chat about Graham Gano. I think that's a foregone conclusion. The Giants are in no hurry. They don't have to say anything. And some people, just so you know, don't take that just because we haven't heard it, that it hasn't technically happened behind the scenes, that people haven't been informed. It just hasn't leaked out yet. And nothing is official until Wednesday. So sometimes teams go, we're cutting this guy to try to get somebody else who's maybe they're down lower on the claim order. So when a veteran is let go and is going to be released, he goes through waiver. So other teams that want to jump in, if you want to get a guy, you might want to trade for him so he doesn't go out into the free market where other teams could get him. You want to trade and get him. So that's why they leak it sometimes ahead of time, just to see who might jump in. So we'll see. But I think Gano is going to be gone for sure. I'm curious, and I want to know two things for you. First, the Singletary one, I want to ask you, were you surprised, though, that they even offered him the reduced piece to bring him back? And then even more so, are you surprised he took it?
Yeah, first before we get to that, wasn't it Jordan himself that just tweeted out that he expects the entire special teams
Yes.
room to be, and he was responding specifically in terms of Kreider, the long snapper. But I think we're going to see not just the place kicker. I suspect the punter is gone too, even though he's under contract as well. I think we're going to see a whole new kicking operation, and that'll factor in. Graham's contract is significant. I think we only save like $1 million or $2 million if we get rid of the punter, but I don't think they want the punter back. I think it's both a salary move plus we can do better than Jamie as a punter, as I suspect. But Kreider's been here for a long time, so that'll be a little weird having a new long snapper as well. Singletary, I think he was the obvious guy to cut for the reasons you outlined in the last video, and he was on the final year of a 3-year contract. I would say that when he played last year, he was actually pretty good, and having him take a pay cut is probably the best of both worlds. You have depth now, and then he's not that expensive. So I'm a little bit surprised he took the pay cut, to answer your question, but maybe he sees the writing on the wall that there's a lot of free agent running backs out there, and every year, even though it's not a great running back class in the draft at the top, there are a lot of day 2 or day 3 running backs that are going to flood the market very, very soon. So he probably did it as an act of self-preservation at this point, and he may like staying in the area too. So I think it's a good move in the sense that now they have a cheaper insurance policy if Cam Scadaboo's injury is an issue moving forward. I don't think it will be, but it's always, you got to have bodies going into camp, going into the summer, and you never know how injuries or whatever is going to happen. So you just have to have bodies. So it's great that he took a pay cut. If they extended him, that would have been a problem for me. The fact that he took a pay cut's great.
So I posed elsewhere. It's not original. Some other people have said it too. So I'm not saying I'm the only person who's thought of this. That it could be a sign, though, that of the one guy that maybe doesn't necessarily fit what they want to do or what they're thinking, might be Tyrone Tracy, might be the odd man out of this scenario. That won't be proven true or not true until free agency begins. If the Giants show interest in another running back after basically taking Singletary back at a reduced salary, and they go after a free agent running back, somebody's going to be the odd man out. They're not going to bring in, you're not going to have 4 veterans, even if they're younger. They're not going to have 4 veteran running backs. That starts filling up the room. The cost, even at a reduced salary for Singletary, that cost would be a bit much when you could get a rookie to be your 4th guy, or just some street free agent. You could be the 4th guy. So I think if they look elsewhere, I think Tyrone Tracy might not be in their long-term for whatever particular reason. It'll be interesting to see. So the Giants' interest came up that they were looking to make a big trade for a cornerback, looking at Kansas City. Trent McDuffie's the name that's been, whether the Giants were all in the way that some of the other teams were is up for debate, because it doesn't sound like the Giants were going to give up a number 1 per se. That being said, do you think this is something, though, that we're going to see a focus here in free agency, taking that swing to try to get a corner? And it still might be via trade. And at some point, does that kind of mean like maybe they've already decided, besides the 5th-year option, that they might just be cutting bait with the Deontay Banks?
Oh, sure. If they were pursuing Trent McDuffie, if that report is correct, then they are really not, Harbaugh's really not happy with the situation at corner, and he should not be. And because Cordell Flott's an unrestricted free agent, he may not even fit the style of defense that the Giants want. That's an open question. Again, they were talking about that on Giants.com yesterday. So this is not some weird take by me or you on this. Cordell Flott had a good year, probably arguably his best year, but he's a thin 175, 180-pound corner who may not suit this defense.
Right.
And he's going to be probably in decent demand because he's a guy coming off of, there aren't a lot of free agents coming off their first contract that have an upside in this free agent class. So teams are doing a much better job of re-signing talent. So somebody like Cordell Flott is probably could surprisingly get a pretty good contract, like a $10 million a year contract from somebody. And if he's gone, our situation at corner is not good at all. And the fact that if they were pursuing Trent McDuffie, and there are rumors out there that they may be pursuing other high-profile alternatives, that tells us that John Harbaugh, who did coach defensive backs for 1 year in Philadelphia, his Denard Wilson, the new defensive coordinator, who cut his teeth on coaching defensive backs, and then of course we have two new defensive back coaches, including one that came from Kansas City. They're not happy with the situation at corner, and it tells me, without a shadow of a doubt, that Deonte Banks has not caught their attention in a good way. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I am glad we didn't pay the price that the other team did for Trent McDuffie, because that was a steep price. That would, if we'd woken up to that, and I don't think they would have done that, but it would have been like, holy crap. Then we would have been like, was John Harbaugh losing his mind at that point?
So I am curious, a lot of people who do this, who do podcasts, who do social media stuff, a lot of their stuff is AI driven, like the whole thing is AI driven, but they'll tend to do the clickbait stuff, right? They'll drop something, but they don't say what it is. Ryan Dunleavy dropped something, and I'm just curious, and I don't know if I'll ask Jordan when he comes on specifically Ryan's part, but I'm going to ask him a roundabout way the question. Ryan Dunleavy dropped, there is some big crazy thing that he's heard the Giants in free agency, but until he gets it confirmed and he goes by 8 others, I'm like, Jesus, so you want one-fourth of the league needs to confirm that this is possibly true. But you don't, he doesn't give away even remotely what it might be. So then all these people are scrambling to try to figure out. But it does seem to keep coming up over and over and over again that the Giants want to make a big splash on, it sounds like on defense. Some of it keeps being targeted at linebacker, but more and more and more seems to be the secondary. And I'm not convinced that it's only going to be one secondary, like one corner. I think safety's on their mind too, and that's something to keep an eye on as well. Focus for you, do you think that, I mean, if the Giants are going to you keep thinking the Giants are going to go second tier, third tier free agency. That's been your stance all along. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to make a big splash. If it's a big splash, where do you see it? Linebacker or safe or defensive back?
It could be anywhere on this roster other than quarterback, at an edge, and left tackle. I mean, it could be a wide receiver. It could be an offensive lineman. It could be linebacker, like you said, a secondary, like you said. We're incredibly thin on the defensive line. I mean, it could be anywhere.
Right.
On this. Right. I mean, you and I are going to cover the free agents, and after Jordan comes on, we're going to start talking about what free agents are on the market. It's not a great free agent class, so maybe this is part of that Kayvon Thibodeau trade with a draft pick for somebody. It's going to be really interesting if they're going to trade away picks. Then they don't have a lot of picks. The MO in Baltimore, it was acquiring picks, not trading away picks before the draft. So I'm very curious. What's happened in the last few days is sort of gone counter to what you and I thought. You thought they would focus more on offensive players in free agency and go defense in the draft. Yes. And that they seem to be so far doing the reverse of that. And I thought they would go cheap in free agency. And so far, if you factor in the trade stuff, they may be looking for a big splash. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I keep saying it over and over again. I said it yesterday too when I was on with Dave Del Cole on the Scouts Honor podcast. I'm really fascinated in the team building aspect of this. How are they going to operate differently with John Harbaugh on running the show? And he is running the show. Joe Shane's helping him, but these are going to be Harbaugh's decisions. And the Trent McDuffie thing kind of blew me away a little bit. So I don't know how serious that was, but they're looking at all avenues to improve this team.
Yeah, that was surprising when some of the other stuff that we were kind of waiting for, right? The names to leak out that they're getting guys that are obvious. Hudson was an obvious one, but they hadn't said anything. The idea of trading for McDuffie came out of nowhere. There was all this talk that they were interested in a linebacker, and all this, tying it to Tremaine Edmonds, who ultimately, by the way, the Bears are releasing. I don't think anybody wanted that contract. I can't see the Giants going for Fred Warner. That contract is crazy. You can't get rid of Kayvon's contract in a trade and bring back one that's actually even more money than what you were giving up. The point of moving Kayvon is twofold. Either you gain a player that you can use, but you still reduce some of your cap, or you gain picks or singular pick, depending on how high, and gain the cap space. You're not going to take on more cap space. That doesn't make sense, especially with a guy who's a little bit older and has had even more injuries over the last few years. So Fred Warner does not make any sense for the Giants. I'm really curious to see. Oh, awesome. Let's bring him on. Let's get him right up here. We'll add him to the stage. There he is. And on a Saturday morning, Jordan Raanan joined us. First off, thank you for taking just some few minutes of your time in this. We lost him. Hopefully he's going to just click that back again. It's Saturday morning. It's Saturday morning. We'll give him a pass on that. We did not cut him. I promise. We'll give him the.
He came on to give us the finger, and he left.
He's like, I'm out of here.
I'm out of here, bitches. Goodbye.
So, but I am curious to ask.
He's on.
All right. Well,
you got him?
There we go.
There we go.
There video in the morning, but it's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday morning.
This is kind of my new MO. I'm like the old boomer who can't figure out the electronics.
Yeah,
it's kind of getting embarrassing, but we'll make do.
And I'm pretty sure of the three of us, you're the youngest. So let's easy on the boomer.
I was trying to get the phone on the iPod. It started squeezing the buttons on the side. It signed me out. So now the phone just sitting here on my computer.
There we go. Well, we're good. I'm going to keep it brief. I told you I'd keep it tight. We're going to keep it tight. It's your Saturday. Plus, I think it's going to be busy. So real quick from you, just some thoughts on what's been leaked out so far. When I say guess leak, but just let out. Hudson's obvious. The Devin Singletary one does seem to catch a lot of Giants fans by surprise that he took the reduced piece. Is there anything that you've heard that they just haven't kind of let out yet of other players that are on their way out the door?
Well, it looks like the specialist might be overhauled. That's one thing they'll say. You're talking about, Graham Gano. We'll see about Jamie Gillen. He's the questionable one. Casey Kreider looks like he's a free agent. He's going to have opportunities elsewhere. So it doesn't look like he's probably going to return. So there's some moves coming here as we move forward. Who else? I don't really want to speculate on who's definitely getting cut if I don't know it. So
Sure.
So I'll stay at that for now. But there'll be some other minor moves. Obviously, Kayvon Thibodeau's a guy who could be moved via trade as they try to clear the deck and get ready to make moves here in free agency. And then when they make some signings, I think you'll see some guys get moved along the way also. Like, let's just say they add a safety and pay for a safety. Complete hypothetical. I don't know how serious and how much money they want to put into that. But sure. Moving a guy like Tyler Nubin is not outrageous to think of. If they sign Tyler Linderbaum, moving a guy like John Michael Schmitz, even though these might be for late round picks, is not inconceivable. So there's a lot of things like that. Although I do think they'll end up, those guys will end up on the roster when all said and done. If I had to guess at this point.
Did it surprise you that the story about their interest in Trent McDuffie that seemed to come out of nowhere?
Yeah, so I looked into that, and I think that's overblown a little bit. I don't know if the Chiefs were using the Giants a little bit to that degree, and think about it for a second. How does that completely make sense for the Giants? They're going to have $50 million in two cornerbacks for this year. And how the heck are the Giants going to give up a high draft pick? Because look what it costs to get him.
Right.
So the Giants are going to have one top 100 pick.
Right.
That this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Now, if you tell me they want to add a cornerback without giving up a top pick, and find the scenario where you can make that happen. Okay, that makes sense. But How could the Giants? First of all, they're not giving up pick 5. We know that, right?
Right.
So we're basically talking. They don't have a 3rd round pick.
Right.
So we're basically talking about a 2nd round pick. So the Giants in that scenario, if that was completely true, I think they probably checked in. And my understanding is they did check in, but I don't know about being down to the finals. They would have had the number 5th pick or whatever if you trade back and then not pick again until day 3.
Right. Yeah, that would have been bad.
You guys tell me, does that make a ton of sense to you?
No.
So I don't think it was to the degree that it was being portrayed as.
Okay.
So the Devin Singletary reduction in salary cap money stays on with the team. For you, is that any indicator for how they feel about anybody else on the current roster, running back wise, or was it just it makes sense because hey, it gives us a guy, and if we don't get some other bodies, he's at least a camp body, and we'll see what happens after the draft. Just your thoughts on that, because it did kind of come out of nowhere. It seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I thought he probably would be gone. I mean, just look at the salary and look at the production, and it didn't make sense. But he was willing to take a pay cut to that degree, and there's no guaranteed money. So what's the risk if you're the Giants here? You could wait to see what happens. Like, sure, I was the first one, I think, that reported it, that they were, had at least shown interest in a guy like Kenneth Walker. And that opened my eyes, if only more than anything, to show like, okay, this is what they're trying to build, right? This is what they're trying to become as a team. And, it's going to be a run concentrated approach, whatever that is in today's NFL, whatever degree, run heavy might be like what, 52% run. It's still barely, it's still pretty close to 50-50, but much more physical, power team, fullback, less value in the slot receiver, which we kind of assumed. And they're going to look to add pieces and, offensive line, running back, even wide receivers that can block, right? Like a name that I heard is Jake Bobo is a guy they would have some interest in. Jake Bobo, also from Seattle, is a bigger, more physical wide receiver who he's never really done a ton as a receiver, right? He's a bit of a red zone threat, but he's a good blocker.
Right.
So that it all kind of, when you see the profile of the guys that they're looking at, it kind of makes sense to me. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Giants. The road that they're planning to travel down here. You never really know which players you're going to get. And even if you have some guys in mind, you might get outbid and then you have to pivot.
Sure.
Like last year, the Giants were going to sign Will Fries, right?
Right.
They were trying to sign Will Fries. They ultimately didn't get him. They got outbid. He got a lot of money from the Minnesota Vikings, right? They went out of nowhere and then just pivoted to Javon Holland, who had no idea that they were going to sign him. He's on the record saying that. So that's kind of how free agency works. I mean, you could have an intention, okay, this is our plan A, and then plan A doesn't pan out, and you have to pivot to plan B, plan C, plan D.
Well,
I'm sorry, John.
I was just going to say, well, the way it turned out on the field for Holland, it didn't seem like the Giants knew what they were doing with him either. So that kind of worked out both ways. That
was a bad signing for year one, at least. They better hope that John Harbaugh can get that right, because otherwise that'll be a really bad. That whole thing with McKinney to Holland will end up being an ugly, ugly mistake if they don't get better play out of him this year.
And no more James Hudson signings, please. Real quick, it seems like everyone has a different thought on whether Illuminor, Cordell Flott, or Wan'Dale Robinson are on the way out or have a chance to be re-signed. The latest, it seems like a lot of people think Robinson's going to the Titans because of their cap space and the Daboll connection. Do you have any updated thoughts? And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot on, are all three gone? Somebody might be on their way back, or who knows at this point?
Robinson to the Titans is one of those that you hear, and I've heard it as well plenty. Just seems like that's likely to happen. You don't know until the negotiating opens. If someone goes and offers him $20 million a year, he'll end up somewhere else, right?
Right.
So there's always possibilities. I mean, he's a pretty good player. He had 1,000-yard season, gotten better as he's gone along. So I think the likelihood is it's probably a long shot for him to return. Cordell Flott, I think the Giants will just like to go in another direction. Like, Cordell Flott is a younger guy. He's a good cover guy. He's 175 pounds, and it might be generous, right? So he's not a huge asset against the run. I'm not sure he's a great fit for what the Giants are going to do here. He's in that like that $10 million ish range from what I've heard. But a guy like Jamel Dean, who I think it's been out there that they've been interested in. Think about it. He's a bigger, more physical cornerback. If he's in that same range, it's a shorter commitment. I could see the Giants making that pivot very easily to something like that. And then Illuminor, I think that one has a chance. He has a chance to return. He would like to return, or at least he's open to a return. I know that. And there isn't a natural solution if you don't get him. I don't think that's out there.
Right.
And he's not the perfect fit. Like, he's better pass blocker probably than he is a run blocker. And but at the same time as Rasheed Walker, right, from the Packers, he's more of a left tackle, right? So is he really going to want to sign to be a right tackle? Probably not. The other guy there is Braden Smith. He's maybe a better fit, but he's had some injury problems in the past. And so there's really not a lot of natural solutions if it's in free agency, if it's not Jermaine Illuminor. So my understanding is there's a chance that he does return, and we'll have to just wait and see probably the next 48 hours now.
Not to ask anything that you can't share. So I want more of a general opinion. Does this offseason and just stuff that you were able to get out of Giants Central in previous years, does it seem a little different, or some of where, I don't want to use the word leaks, but let's just say it was a little drafty from Giants Central, that seems to be kind of tightened up slightly in terms of, we don't hear a lot of the things that were becoming very blatant. Things were blatantly obvious right before stuff started of where the Giants' interest was. And right now it seems like that's tightened up. Do you get that feeling?
Like what? Tell me an example of something we think was super open and like known.
Well, if you look at some of the past draft stuff, like before leading in, all of a sudden it was becoming obvious coming out of like the Giants were really kind of looking at this guy. I can go back and look at things from years past where the Leonard Floyd interest that got out there. Just things like that, or players the Giants might be interested in. I'm just curious, are you finding that now with the Harbaugh in place and that whole regime that maybe some of the talking is a little less, or was that always overblown?
I think that's why I asked you give me an example so I could think in my head of where that came from. Leonard Floyd's a long time ago though, right?
Yeah.
So
It's a few years ago, but
Malik Neighbors. Remember, we knew that like Dabo loved Neighbors.
Oh, he's a dog. And
Dabo actually would love Dart, like that. Those are kind of things we found out as we went through the draft process. But if you think about it, those aren't things that generally came from inside the building. I think more often than not, it's coming from outside the building. People then attribute it to it. And plus, honestly, there's so much crap out there now. Like and especially if you go on like X, like there's so many stupid accounts like that and people that are like pretending to play insider, like, and intensely trying to fool people.
Yeah. And
it works on a lot of people, but like you don't even need to create subterfuge. It like happens naturally now. Like, so I really don't think so. Now, I don't know if John Harbaugh is talking to anyone directly. I mean, those relationships, except, maybe Connor, obviously.
I was going to ask that. Was this surprising to you about how much Ian knew about the very specifics of the conversations between John Harbaugh and the Giants? Because you would think the Giants themselves would kind of be like, hey, dude, you don't need to share it. We gave in. Don't be sharing that stuff out in public.
Yeah, that was a little surprising, but Ian's a good reporter, so it doesn't surprise me. He obviously has a pre-existing relationship with John Harbaugh. And then the Chris Merritt thing was the one that surprised me the most, that he even went on record, like, and flexed and like, yeah. I went down to visit him on Sunday morning. Like, whoa, okay. But yeah, so that surprised me. But I think most of the time it ends up coming from outside. Because listen, let me just explain a little inside, journalism. Yeah. The way it works at the Combine is the teams are going and speaking to agents and people around the league about their guys and people that they're interested in. And then, and everybody's talking there. So you're expressing kind of what your plan is. There's really no way to completely hide it. Like, I mean, you could speak in subtleties, which they do, which is why I don't think anyone could really nail down and say, they're getting this guy. This is the guy. And it's never been that way if you think about it. Guys have come out of nowhere in free agency. Who had I mean, we didn't have Javon Holland for one. Bobby Okereke kind of came out of nowhere, if I remember correctly. Like we could sit there and match the positions and then look at the options and then figure out, like, okay, they're talking to middle linebackers, agents of middle linebackers, and you can say, okay, they're going to add a middle linebacker at this range. And like, that's kind of what I have. I have a sheet of paper here with all kinds of players at certain ranges, like middle linebacker. The Giants were talking to guys at the $6 or $7 million range right at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, trade and cuts can change that. Guard, $10 million range, and I have like a bunch of guys here that are listed in like the $10 million range. Elijah Vera Tucker, Wyatt Teller, those being some Dylan Parham. So like, okay, you say, okay, these are the group of guys. Maybe they're going to get somebody like that. It could be somebody completely off the grid. It could be Ed Ingram from the Houston Texans, who I didn't put in my story. I think I had him in, and I think I took him out, if I remember correctly. So I think that's kind of how it works, more than like people in the Giants saying, "Hey, by the way, we're going to sign this guy." Like,
right.
Well, we saw that in Hard Knocks.
I always tell.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, we saw that in Hard Knocks, where when some free agent would sign with another team that they were targeting, they would pivot to somebody else. Exactly what you're just talking about.
Right.
So
think about this: if Joe Shane or John Harbaugh called me and said, "Hey, we're interested in, Joel Bitonio as a guard," I immediately, my antennas would go up and be like, why the hell are they calling me and telling me that? That doesn't even make sense. They're likely using me for something, and I wouldn't even want. I'd have to even question what degree that's even somewhat true.
Right.
So I really don't think it necessarily works that way. Now maybe we'll have conversations with people in the organization at some point. Hey, you think this guy's a good player? Yeah, sure. We think he's a pretty good player. But then you have to kind of piece stuff together.
Yeah, I remember when Rich Eisen came out of the combine that one year, and he was convinced that the Giants were going to draft J.J. McCarthy. From what he heard, everybody said the Giants were interested in J.J. McCarthy, and that had legs of its own. So that supports what you were saying about the combine as well, too. Real quick question.
He also had the Giants were done with Daniel Jones, and I was like, well, by done with Daniel Jones, like he was going to start that year. So I don't know. Like they're not obviously not done with they weren't done with Daniel Jones,
right?
But it was expressed to him, I'm sure, by somebody that long term, it's over for him. And ultimately, that was true. So sometimes it's just the wording and the phrasing.
Right. Sure. Real quick on Ryan Dunleavy had a very cryptic tweet yesterday where he said, yes, I'm hearing something really, really big, but it's so big, I'm not going to post it unless I have 8 other sources confirm this. I'm not asking you to tell us what he knows, but did that surprise you? I mean, that didn't seem like Ryan. That's a typical Ryan tweet.
We just went on our group text, with some of the beat reporters and made fun of him for like an hour for like that. for such a stupid tweet, by the way.
It seemed like clickbait, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, like he knows it. He knows when he puts that up right away, like what the result is going to be from that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I have no idea what he's talking about. Like I and honestly, I don't think, and I actually, I'm not even going to speak for him. I have no idea what he's talking about. Like I had some things in my head, and one that I thought of, like, okay, is he talking about Odell Beckham Jr. possibly returning? Like that was the first thing that came to my head.
Dear God, no.
Like that would be crazy. It's not. That's not it. Like Odell would like to return. I think he's already made that known publicly, right? But and I've heard that, but I don't see that happening. But I mean, you never know. But something
Travis
like
Kelce's coming here. That's a no.
Isn't that another one that somebody put out there at some point, and then somebody said they stole or something?
Yes,
I forget who it was.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of crap floating out there.
So real quick, because I want to keep to exactly what I said and get you out of here. So because I'm sure
don't worry, I'm not in a rush. We got all right.
All right. So is there?
Time. So if you want, I got another 10 minutes if you want.
Okay, 2 things specifically. One, you've already talked about with what you were on with Bobby Skinner. You guys were talking about it, so I'm going to give you the chance one more time to tell the Giants fans who may not have seen this, and that is your opinion on smoke screens and just the thought of that. And then the second part is, do you still see the thought was that this roster is probably going to get blown up a lot more than people think? That there's not, I think too many people hold on to like the offensive line and say, hey, it was so much better last year, which has absolutely no bearing on a John Harbaugh led team. Do you still expect to see a big blow up on the roster that some might not see coming?
Yeah, just more like what I said before. There's just going to be guys that we think are going to be part of the team that maybe have been key players in the past that John Harbaugh's not going to like, right? Or not going to see as a good fit in what he's trying to do. And then they're going to end up getting moved. And I'm not talking about like Dexter Lawrence. I don't think he's going anywhere. Brian Bird, like, the big players on the team, those guys are staying. But there's just going to be a lot of moves, right? Like I said before, special teams has a chance to be completely turned over. Some of these younger guys that haven't played well, if they get natural, replacements for them, they could be moved. I think the Giants are going to try to add draft picks. I don't think that's a secret to anyone, right? They have two top 100 picks as we stand right now. Right. I think they're just going to be looking to add draft capital. If you look from Baltimore and you look at their past and how they operated, they're big. All right, let's load up on our lottery tickets as much as possible. They use comp picks to get there, right? Maybe John Harbaugh has a similar philosophy in that. And also you know what? It benefits us to sign guys that were cut because then it doesn't count in the compensatory formula.
Right.
These are all things that I think are on the table. That's the beauty of this offseason. And I don't think, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to, nobody really knows. We're in like a feeling it out period, right, with John Harbaugh to see kind of what he wants to do and how he wants to shape this team and how he's going to operate. We could sit there and look at what they did in Baltimore, but how much was him? They have a good front office. They had Ozzie Newsome. They have Eric DeCosta. They had a good setup around him. Was that him? Or, does he believe in all those things? We don't know. And the beauty of that, and especially this offseason, is we're going to find out some of those things.
Eric, I'll let you.
Was there anything at the combine when you were doing the interviews that sort of surprised you? I saw you interviewed, I forget what show you were on, and you were all sort of, the three of you were joking about Joe Shane's reaction to one question where he seemed a little overly defensive about his role being changed. And I get that. I understand that everybody has an ego and they have pride and they don't want to be criticized in public. But I got the perception, it seems like you got the perception based on the interview that I saw of you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that you seemed a little surprised by his defensiveness at the combine too. But if I'm off, let me know.
Yeah, no, I mean, he seemed to really want to state that I'm the general manager. My role has not changed. But I mean, all we have to do is look at the facts. There's departments that are reporting to Dawn Aponte and not him. So obviously his role has changed. I mean, it's that simple, right? And John Harbaugh is making final decisions. He's not the final decision maker. So of course his role has changed. The reality of the situation, and it seems like Joe Shane has made a solid impression so far, is that he's on a trial period with John Harbaugh, right? At the end of the day. And we'll see if, how that works out, whether it's in May, whether it's next year, whether it's 10 years from now, we don't know. I don't think anybody really knows, except for maybe John Harbaugh deep down. But even then, I think he's open to working with him and seeing how it works out. So I think that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, the answer was a little bit, kind of defensive. It's just not necessary. If I'm him and he ever asks me for advice, which, by the way, trust me, he is. I'm probably on the latter half of people in the world that he's going to ask for advice.
You are a trip to the moon closer than Pat Leonard ever will be. So
okay, all right. I'm ahead of Pat Leonard, but behind 99.9% of the rest of humanity. Okay.
Was there anything else from those interviews? It seemed they seemed pretty typical, normal interviews. Was there anything else that came out of those interviews that surprised you or caught your attention, or not really?
No, I think more so talking behind the scenes is where you got good information. I think I found the Giants are, Donard Wilson in particular, he looks at Dexter Lawrence as the guy. He wanted to make sure that Dexter Lawrence was there, that he was really high on him. That became clear to me talking to people throughout the combine. You know, ironically, I don't think Matt Nagy was there, and I'm pretty sure, and I know Brian Callahan wasn't there. I was hoping to get an opportunity to meet them, but they weren't even there at the combine, so that was kind of interesting. Granted, Brian Callahan's at a position where they just drafted a guy. They both just got hired, so I think they were just trying to catch up. Not the end of the world. Some teams don't even send their coaches to the combine. But that was something that I definitely did notice, at least. Not that I'm raising a flag or anything. What else? Yeah, the Kayvon thing was one of the more interesting things that came out of it. You realize, hey, that one is the one that's open for interpretation. I think it depends on what the Giants get. The problem is I'm not sure a day 2 pick is going to be available to them.
Right.
That's the tough part. I think if they were able to get a day 2 pick, they would make that move right now. But, would you do it for a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick? Now that's what we're getting into that area, because you're talking about a guy who's making $15 million, which isn't a ton, but for an edge rusher, but it's also not nothing. He's not on a cheap rookie deal, so it is something. And then you only have 1 year of a contract left, so you would if you give up anything valuable, you'd be looking to re-sign him. And do we really know? You kind of need to see. He's a solid player, but is he a player you want to invest in long term? Is he the right fit for your locker room? There's all these questions, so it kind of diminishes his value. And I think the player for player trade that we saw the Jets kind of make for Jermaine Johnson might be the best that the Giants could do here with Kayvon Thibodeau.
Right.
So we'll wrap up for you. Let everybody know. I mean, you're all over the place. You got your own podcast stuff going on. Where best for people this over the weekend and start of free agency to really be following you? Let them know what's the best way to catch that breaking news that you're going to have.
Yeah, obviously X is a place for breaking news. It's just easy to disseminate it there. But Breaking Big Blue, I should be doing something with Bobby Skinner, Giants Nation show. Haven't discussed when we're going to do it. But I'm thinking of doing something tomorrow. Well, today's Saturday, so it's tomorrow night leading into free agency. So just keep an eye out. I'm on most social platforms. Jordan Raanan on ESPN, and I am on Big Blue Interactive, right? Yeah, I am. I have a username. I haven't used it in a while. I haven't used the username, so I opened it up. I have it on my screen right now, Big Blue Interactive.
Yeah, if you haven't logged in a while, it might be there because it just all gets automatically purged. But yeah, you posted.
I'm not there anymore. I'm trying to.
Well, I don't know.
If I have a
if it's been longer than a year and a half, your account won't be there. But that's not.
Yeah. So my username is not there. It was very deceptive. It was Jordan Raanan, one word.
Yeah. There you go. Not 4 times champs. Okay. Yeah. So there we go.
But before I came on, I did pop up the site, and I do pop up once in a while, especially during things like free agency and the draft. Harder during the season, but yeah, and just to make sure I was up to date on the things you guys were talking about before we came on here.
Awesome. Well,
there's some interesting threads for sure, by the way.
Oh, dude. Pick and choose wisely. So that being said, Jordan, thanks for coming on. We're going to let you get to your day, and we'll keep following you, and we'll catch you again real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was great.
Appreciate you guys. Enjoy you.
Eric, do your thing.
We interrupt this broadcast with breaking news for New York Giants fans. Researchers have confirmed the most effective way to survive the season is watching Inside BBI with John and Eric. Doctors also recommend liking, subscribing, and sharing with other emotionally exhausted.
That accidentally kicked Patty off too, John.
Oh no!
You want to text her real quick, or
she should pop right back on. I had messaged her slightly just a second ago. Yeah, I was trying. There she is.
Oh, there she is.
There you are.
There you are.
Hey,
me off. I thought what you didn't want me anymore.
We were joking with Jordan when he came on. He joked about being a boomer with technology, and I realized I gave Eric the ability.
Yeah, you can't give me technology.
I should have done it.
All good, guys. All good.
I'd never kick you off, Patty.
Ah.
Not intentionally.
So with that, it's a Saturday morning. I don't want to take a ton of your time, so we're going to maximize your availability here. Just real quick, one of the things we just talked about to Jordan about was kind of some of the things the Giants have done so far, or even better yet, haven't done so far. Are you surprised we haven't heard more about some of what we thought were the more obvious things? Graham Gano, looking at some other areas where they're going to drop his salary, and then we really haven't heard a lot about, like, the Devin Singletary thing kind of came out of nowhere that he took that reduced piece. So your thoughts so far on what they've done and anything that surprised you or that you kind of expected?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised with the Devin Singletary move that they made. I guess I shouldn't be in retrospect because, it's a good deal for Singletary. I don't think he's going to get that kind of money elsewhere on the open market. So I was surprised with that. I'll be honest with you. I know there's been a lot of talk about the Giants adding another running back. I'd be curious to see how that works because, are they going to set up like what Baltimore has, or are they basically saying, okay, Scatterboo and Tracy, they're not going to be as big of a part in the running game. So that was kind of a surprise to me. But I think the thing that's not been a surprise to me, because if you look at the history, the Giants have been trying to do this now for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years, was their attempt to get a CB1. I've been saying this all along. They do not have a CB1 on that roster. They have not had one since, I think you can make the case for James Bradbury a few years ago. So that has got to be something that they're just itching to get done. I would fully expect at some point they're going to try and again to get a CB1, an established veteran, and just see what they could do. Because look, they face a lot of good receivers in the division. So they better beef up that back end of the secondary. And also, if you want the front seven to be a little bit more effective in the pass rush, you better have guys back there who can cover like a blanket.
Right. You had I want to shout out to you for your show because you've had some really good guests on lately. And one of the things I think you've done that's really smart is you've had reporters that cover other teams where some of the new coaches have come from. So you had a couple of great interviews, for instance, on the Tennessee Titan beat reporters come on the show. I saw a couple of your shows on that. I probably missed some others. For those who haven't seen that, number one, I'd recommend people go back and watch those. But was there anything that caught your attention when you were doing those interviews that you were really excited about or worried about, or just anything you want to throw out there that you thought was interesting that these reporters from the other teams told you about Denard Wilson or any of the coaches that you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about Denard Wilson and the defense that, he had in Tennessee and what he wants to bring over to the Giants. Supposedly, we don't know exactly what he wants to bring over. So let me just preface that. But, you're talking an aggressive scheme, and you're talking, more importantly, somebody who has a bit better idea of how to get the most out of his talent, which I think we can all agree the last year and a half, the Giants were not able to do on defense. Right. We can all agree that. Right. And, we all know the reasons why. So, people look at Tennessee's defense and they say, it wasn't that good. How much of that was he didn't have the personnel? Was he missing key pieces, which I think you can make a case for that being, true. So I'm excited about Denard Wilson, the aggressiveness, the tendency to disguise, the physicality that I think was missing at times on the Giants defense. But Matt Nagy, the thing I guess I'm most curious about is, he was good in Chicago as the head coach until things started to fall apart a little bit. Then he went back to Andy Reid, but we all know that Andy Reid is the offensive brain down there. Right. So how much, can you say, oh, this was on Matt Nagy versus Andy Reid? I think, it's kind of hard to kind of divide it, if you will, and say Matt Nagy was responsible for this, whereas Andy Reid was responsible for that. So the jury for me is still out on Matt Nagy. But that being said, I'm very optimistic that he's going to come in here. He's going to run an offense that's going to be, fully loaded. If they can get a couple more pieces added, mainly a receiver, address the tight end situation. I'm curious to see if they incorporate more 12 personnel. I know with John Harbaugh down in Baltimore, I believe they ran 12 personnel at the 4th highest rate in the league last year. So I'm curious to see if maybe we see a shift towards that. And if so, what kind of tight end do they maybe look to bring in, and how much more involved is that tight end going to be in the passing game?
Well, I wanted to ask you. I'm glad you delved into that, because that's actually a question I want to ask. So, if you take into consideration what we were talking about with Nagy, right? He's with Chicago, but then he goes to Kansas City. How much of with Kansas City was Nagy, and how much of it really is Andy Reid's piece? But a common thread between those two places was when Nagy was in Chicago, they had a reliance on their tight ends. They went out and they got tight ends. They brought in Cole Kmet at that time, drafted him fairly high. They liked using their tight ends. Kansas City uses their tight ends. If you tie in Baltimore, they love having multiple tight ends on their roster, but they also carry a fullback. And I'm wondering, are your thoughts there on what the Giants might be looking at tight end wise, including the fact that you still have Daniel Bellinger around? Are they going to keep him? Is he a guy they're going to want to try to remain a roster? Or are they going another direction? And do you see them looking to bring in a fullback like a Patrick Ricard, or even Alex Ingold now has been released by Miami?
Yeah, I do think a fullback position is, we will see that a little bit more than we have in the past. Now, with Daniel Bellinger, one of the reasons why I keep beating the drum for him to come back is you look at where he lined up for the Giants, during his time here, he played a little fullback.
Yeah.
So, now you have the versatility there that if you want to send him on a pass route out of the backfield, you can. You want to line him up in the slot, you can. If you want to put him in line, you can. Sometimes with a fullback, and I'm just trying to remember Patrick Ricard with Baltimore, if he ran the ball much. I don't think he did. I think he was more of a pass catcher, if I remember correctly.
Agreed.
And I haven't looked at, what the fullback who Miami just released. I haven't looked at how he was used. But, sometimes the problem with just having a pure fullback is you kind of telegraph what you're going to do. So you got to be really creative in disguising and spreading that ball around so that, and I think back to the time, you guys remember when Madison Hedgecock was on the roster?
Yeah.
Every time he came on, 9 times out of 10, it was a run play and everybody knew it. So you don't want to fall into that rut if you bring in a fullback. You want somebody who's versatile enough to where, oh, hey, let's hand the ball off to him and catch everybody off guard, or let's throw him a pass out of the backfield.
I was surprised, though, because I was curious to see how much Baltimore did use the fullback last year. So I was looking at the snap counts. They use the fullback way more than most teams in the NFL do. So, but it's funny that you had the old Madison Hedgecock reference that made me laugh. Patty, something that sometimes weighs on my mind that I think people don't think about at this time of year is, look, you've been covering the Giants for a long time. You go into these interviews with them. You see them post game when they win or they lose. This is kind of a tough time of the year for these guys. And do you have a personal reaction to this time of year when you see players that you've covered in person, maybe you've developed a little bit of a relationship with, and they get cut or they're on the way to a different team. Their careers could be over if they do get cut. Is this kind of sort of a bittersweet time of the year for you as someone who actually face-to-face interacts with these guys?
Well, as a human being, yes. I mean, as a reporter, you're not supposed to have,
Right.
any kind of feeling one way or another, but I'm a human being first.
Right.
Always have been, and I always will be. So yeah, it does kind of, make me sad to see guys who want to continue playing and then they're told they're not good enough and they get cut and they don't land anywhere. And especially when you hear about guys who get cut and they don't have a fallback plan and then they fall on hard times. So that's, kind of heart-wrenching.
Right.
But it is a business. Things happen. It's not fun, but I think a lot of guys understand that, and they try and make the best of it. When you look at Bobby Okereke, I fully believe Bobby Okereke is going to land someplace.
Right.
James Hudson,
Maybe
I don't
not.
know. Maybe he'll land it, later in the process. I don't think people will be banging down his door to sign him right away. So, it's just, it is sad, but from a human perspective, but it's part of the business. It's like cut down day, after training camp, you see all
Right.
these guys who bust their butts, who work hard, who are given encouragement, who are spoken of highly by their coaches, and then at the end of the day, they're told, well, you're not quite good enough to make the roster.
Yeah, the only reason I throw that out there is I do want, and I think a lot of people know this, but sometimes I wonder, we're dealing with human beings here. So as much as we want to see the team improve, and I'm not saying they should keep players that aren't very good or anything like that, but I just wanted to, there is a human element of this, and you are someone who interacts with these people, face to face. It's not social media. It's not, you're not hiding behind a keyboard or anything like that. So I just wanted to get your reaction on that. So I appreciate that.
So to answer your question a few minutes ago, Alec Ingold had 1 carry for 3 yards. Patrick Ricard had 2 carries. Again, we're not talking a lot of rushing from either one of those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
They do bring a big physical nature, which is what I kind of think. Do you still, a lot of the talk, everybody in media seem to hint at it, but yet never really say specifically what they were thinking, just more of a general concept, that this roster was going to be kind of blown up in a way that some people weren't expecting. Do you still see that as more than likely happening? And if so, what area of the team is going to see a little bit more change than maybe you thought it would heading into when Harbaugh was first hired, and now seeing how things are being laid out?
I don't know that it's going to get totally blown up. I think they have a pretty solid roster in several areas. They're missing certain positions. Obviously, linebacker is a huge hole right now. A CB1, like I've been saying,
Sure.
That is a big hole. You probably want to add another receiver to the mix because Malik Neighbors, he'll be back eventually, but, he could still use somebody to take some of the onus off of him. If I had to take a guess, I would say maybe tight end and running back, because that's your core for your power running game. And then you can also throw in offensive line. I think offensive line might be in line for a shakeup. I would be surprised if Greg Van Roten is back. Jermaine Illuminor, I feel a little bit better about him coming back than I did maybe a month and a half ago.
Okay.
And then what do you do at center? I don't think they're going to be able to afford Tyler Linderbaum. So I think you get by with JMS for another year, and you just put 2 solid guards on either side of him, and then maybe he becomes a little bit more effective. And then I'm just not sure what they're going to do with John Runyon. I mean, John Runyon, the problem the Giants have is I think they only have 2 guards under contract right now, Runyon and Jay Kubas. So everybody else is a free agent. So do you really want to be cutting guards? You're going to have to replace them. So do you bring back an Aaron Stinney temporarily, or do you go in a whole different direction? And as we know, guys, we saw this the last 2 years, guards are starting to get paid big bucks. So That's why I'm a little doubtful that they're going to be in the mix for Tyler Linderbaum. Hey, look, if they can get him, great. But I think guard would be the higher priority. And the offensive line, if you're going to blow that unit up, say for Andrew Thomas, now's probably the time to do that, because you're bringing in a new position coach who's probably going to want everybody doing his techniques versus what Brasillo taught him. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow, because the offensive line the last couple of years got better, but was it still where they wanted it to be? No, I mean, it never really is, but I think that's maybe the area you've got to really hone in on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they were so traumatized by how bad the Giants offensive line was for a decade, and then they finally had a decent year last year, and they don't want to touch it again. But I was arguing with someone on X that you've got a new coaching staff, you've got a completely new system. They're going to view the players differently and the fit of those players in that system, and you've got age issues, and things are going to have to change. And the person I was interacting with said, no, don't change it. Don't change. I said, it doesn't work that way. So I think we're going to see, and I think you made an excellent point, Patty. If you're going to start the change, this is the time to do it now, because everything is going to be reset at this point. Don't wait. If you get the ball going on that. So I think that's a really good point that you just made.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. I mean, look, these are veterans, and, I forgot to mention Marcus Bowe. I saw somebody in the comments said, well, what about Bowe? The question there is, do you want to convert him to guard? Maybe he's an answer at guard. I can't remember. I think maybe early on in his college career, he dabbled at guard, if I remember correctly. But, how does this new coaching staff view guys? Because remember,
Sure.
last year, everybody said, oh, on the coaching staff, oh, Marcus Bowe is a tackle. That's where we're going to play him. And I always thought that was a mistake not to have him dabble at guard. And at the end of the year, I asked him, I said, how much work and practice did you actually do at guard? And he said to me, not a whole lot. So if they're going to cross-train him, now's the time to do that and see if maybe he can become an answer. Maybe you keep Raanan, and then maybe, you groom Marcus Bowe to become a guard down the line. So, I mean, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I just found it interesting that sometimes the previous staff was like so honed in on this guy plays this position and we're not going to consider anything else. And, then you got to start from scratch, whereas all over, it would have been beneficial if you had that guy take a few snaps all the way, each week, even if it was just 5 snaps each practice, just to get him a feel for the position.
So one of the things that I kind of proposed, or at least I felt like this is how it's going to go. And I'm curious on what you think. I thought maybe coming into this free agency period, the Giants would focus their free agent pieces, their bigger kind of bring in would be on the offensive side of the ball, and they would draft defense, because offensively you have a young quarterback, you have a young running back. Technically you have a young receiver, he's coming off injury, but they're all young. If you're installing all this new stuff, you kind of want some veterans, you want some guys you can count on, some things to make that move, that jump forward a little faster. Defensively, you've got quality players, and some of them, some veterans. You've got Burns, you've got a Dexter Lawrence. These guys have been around. Even your secondary, God forbid that they are counted on for anything right at the moment, but you have veterans back there, and Holland and Adebo and stuff like that. So you can add young guys and still think that those veterans can keep the message, what you're trying to do and play, and the younger guys can go around that. But it seems kind of like what we've heard, or at least what's trickled out, is the Giants are trying to take swings at corner, trying to take swings at linebacker. The focus seems to be bigger things on defense free agency. What are your thoughts going into free agency, where they may target, what they want to do by side? Or is it really, it's probably going to be all over the roster?
They don't have, as of right now, a lot of salary cap space. You've got to remember, whatever space they have, they're going to need roughly 10 to 12 million to get them through the season. So you've got to take that right off the top of the pot. So as for what I think they're going to do, cornerback, we have seen, that's a top priority.
Sure.
Linebacker, I think they can, they can get that in the draft. This is a deep linebacker class. Eric, you mentioned guests I had Cy on actually last Friday. So if you missed that show, Cy was on Locked On. So I think linebacker, I could see them pairing a rookie with a veteran. Maybe they bring back Micah McFadden on a short-term deal, a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal. But I think definitely you try and get a Sonny Styles there if he is on the board. I really don't know what they're going to do with safety. Safety is kind of an interesting and a head scratcher for me. Did Tyler Nubin regress because he's just not good, or was it the coaching? I still quite can't put a finger on that. On the offensive side of the ball, I do think they're going to add offensive line. Like I said, I mean, you got to remember, John Harbaugh wants to hit the ground running with this team. He's basically said that he expects them to be in the postseason in 2026. So which positions, are the hardest ones for a rookie to pick up? That's where I think they're going to focus on. So I would say maybe offensive line. I would expect them to add defense. I would love to see them add a really big and durable defensive end type, because I still say they haven't really replaced Leonard Williams in that defensive line.
Right.
A cornerback one for sure. Tight end, I think they add a veteran tight end. I'm not sure. I can't remember if this tight end class is deep or not off the top of my head.
It's a good class.
It's a good class. Okay. Yeah. But you're probably looking day 3, because remember, unless they pick up a 3rd-round pick, they'd have to probably wait until day 3 to get a tight end. And, is there going to be a run on the position? So receiver is obviously a position that they have to add to. And you know what? I say this, and I'm not suggesting that they draft at this position, but I'd like to see them pick up a developmental quarterback, because Jameis Winston, God bless him, even though he wants to play another 10, 12 years, I don't know if that's feasible. So why not develop a young guy, even if you pick somebody up as an undrafted free agent, and just develop him so that maybe he becomes that QB2 behind Jackson Dart, once Jameis decides to hang it up and pursue a media career.
And I'll say real quick to that. If you look at the history, if you look at the way the Ravens have done things under John Harbaugh, one thing I've always liked about the way they structure the roster, and something that I've absolutely been really negative about the way the Giants have done it in the past, especially during the you go Pat Shermer to Joe Judge. When Joe Judge was there, 1 minute you had Daniel Jones, and then you had Mike Glennon as the backup, a guy who was completely the opposite of what your quarterback was and what he could do. And Harbaugh's always had with a mobile starting quarterback, he had a mobile backup quarterback. So you don't have to change your entire offense just because you're going to the backup quarterback. At least the same plays can be used because their skills are the same, even if they're not as, same level. I think the Giants would be wise to get a quarterback who isn't Jackson Dart, but is more mobile than a Jameis Winston, gives them that flexibility that you have. So you don't have to get rid of part of your whole playbook if you have to go to the other quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think a lot of us were kind of screaming last year why Jameis Winston, who was a little closer skill set wise to Jackson Dart than Russell Wilson. That's why we were all screaming about that. I mean, the Giants, when they made the switch from Russell Wilson to Jackson Dart, they basically installed a whole new section of the playbook that wasn't there before. So to your point, I think that's excellent. You don't want to have to sit there and say, oh, we've got to spend 3 weeks perfecting this. Get somebody in here who can run similar plays if you need him to.
Right.
Hopefully you never need to go to your backup quarterback, but we all know that, the days of Eli Manning, Iron Man are few and far between. So yeah, I'm all in favor of that. I think that's an excellent point.
Were you there in person for the introductory press conference for John Harbaugh?
Yes, I was.
And anything interesting in terms of the vibe in the room, or was it being there? Was there something that was it different to you at all, or was it just because you've gone through a few of these in the last decade? Was it the same as before, or was there something different about it to you?
I think there was something different about it. It was. I think knowing that John Harbaugh was going to have a little bit bigger role and that the reporting structure changed, there was more of a certainty. Whereas, I always say this, Eric, I always say that coaches, when they're introduced, they always come in and they talk a good game. We're going to be winners. We're going to be this. We're going to be that. Anybody can say anything, but the bottom line is, do you have a plan to be what you say you want to be? And, sometimes, when I look back, it's funny you asked that, because I reflected on, Pat Shermer's presser. I reflected on Brian Daboll's and Joe Judge's. And I just remember them, trying to charm the crowd, if you will.
Right.
And with Harbaugh, he was pleasant, he was charming, but he was also very focused in in his words. And you kind of just sat there or at least I did at any rate. And I said to myself, gosh, this guy has a plan. This guy means business. He knows what he wants. And the mere fact that they changed the reporting structure should tell you that, they like what they heard from him, because they didn't even do that for Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells, a Hall of Fame coach, Tom Coughlin, who should be in the Hall of Fame. They didn't do that for him. So that should tell you just what kind of vibe the whole room had, and just the feeling, a lot of optimism, a lot of smiles, and a lot of, I guess, hope for the future, that this time it's not just pretty words that are being said, that something actually is going to come from it.
And it seemed like there were a number of players in the back that were pretty vocal during it, including James Hudson, but it seemed like they were
begging to stay.
It seemed like it seemed like the players that were there, and there weren't a ton of them, but it looked like there were at least 10. I think I'm just throwing that number out there. It seemed like they were pretty excited about it, at least from somebody who was watching it online. So I don't know if you got that vibe. And the other thing, it's the first time I heard Chris Mara speak to the press. So did you get anything out of that? I know that people were at different media gatherings. I don't know if you were next to Chris Mara at all, but did you find that interesting at all?
Oh yeah. And you know what? I almost, if you pardon the expression, I almost wet myself because he said he watches Locked On Giants. I was like, wow.
There you go.
I nearly passed out. I was like, wow. Because I didn't think anybody, I'm still of the mindset that if your last name's Traina, you're the only one who watches Locked On Giants. Not that I have a whole lot of trainers left, unfortunately, but that being said, Chris Mara, I know he gets a lot of flack from Giant fans, but I give him kudos for stepping up with his brother's illness. I mean, look, anybody who has gone through cancer or has a relative who has gone through cancer, that is not an easy thing to do. And then when you're trying to run a multi-billion-dollar business, to step up like that, I tip my hat to Chris Mara for that because, has the organization made mistakes? Yes. But, can we pinpoint that it was a Chris Mara mistake or a Chris Rossetti mistake or a Joe Shea mistake? Sometimes we can't necessarily pinpoint that. So that's why the organization says it's an organizational decision. But Chris Mara stepped up really well. He was honest, I think, as much as he could be. He shot down some rumors. He answered just about every question thrown his way. So I admire him for that. And, let me just also take a moment to say that I hope John Mara is doing well with his treatments. Cancer is just an absolute horrible disease, and those treatments knock the stuffing out of you.
And you know that personally. Yeah.
I know it firsthand, exactly.
So I want to keep it tight because I did tell you that it's a Saturday morning, and I'm sure there's going to be things coming, so I'm going to keep it tight. But I want to ask you real quick. I'm going to throw maybe 2, maybe 3 things at you. Give me better than 50%, less than 50%. It's going to happen. John Raanan gets released to free up cap space.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I think John Raanan stays, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has to take a pay cut.
Okay, fair enough. Kayvon Thibodeau gets traded.
I'm going to say he might stay, and I say that because I think the Giants want a day 2 pick for him. I don't know that they're going to get it. Because, the injury factor with Kayvon Thibodeau is a problem. The fact that, the numbers have dipped. You can't hang your hat on getting paid on just one good year that he had. And I think the time to trade Kayvon Thibodeau was last year. And, it's interesting. Cy made the same point on my podcast last Friday. So I think there's a better chance that he stays unless they can get a day 2 pick.
The Giants sign an older, well-known receiver, and you can include like a Mike Evans or something like that they go and get a bigger name who might be on the backside of his career to give some stability to that wide receiver room that is pretty bare right at the moment, including the fact that you don't know when Malik Neighbors will truly be ready to go.
If you're talking for leadership, I don't think that's going to be necessary because they count on Darius Slayton for the leadership aspect. But that being said, I don't think Darius Slayton is on this team in 2027 because of the cap number. He will be on the team this year. I don't think that he will be on the team in 2027. I'd be surprised. Do they land a Mike Evans? I think that might be out of their price range, but do I think they will add a veteran receiver? Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, Eric.
Just one last question. I don't mean to put you on a spot. Do you find yourself personally rooting for one particular free agent or 2 in this upcoming class? Because after you drop off, we're going to start talking free agents. I was wondering if, again, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the upcoming class or not. And if you haven't, just say, I don't know. But do you find yourself rooting for anyone?
From the outside or on the team?
Both. You can do either side. You want the Giants to re-sign somebody or somebody from another team?
A guy that I keep coming back to is Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Jalen Watson.
Oh, yeah.
I just like that guy. I think he's flying under the radar. I think, he's young. Cordell Flott, I like Flott, and I think, good for him. He had a good year this past year. But I worry about his frame and the durability with him. And I don't know, is he going to match that physical style of defense? I mean, he tries to be physical, but if you don't withstand the physicality of the game, then, it doesn't make any difference. But I kind of like Jalen Watson from the Chiefs to come in. If they can't land a bigger name from the Giants, I'd love to see Bellinger back. I think Bellinger every year since his second year, they've either tried to trade over him or draft over him. And I don't understand exactly what the issue is. I get it. He's not as athletic as maybe a Theo Johnson, but the guy catches everything thrown within his radius. He's not a horrible blocker. He's versatile. Why wouldn't you want somebody like that on your team?
Right.
Okay.
So the last thing I'm going to ask you, and it is not related to any of the stuff that we talked about, and you can completely put it aside if you want to, and I will not in any way think badly if that's the case.
What is this?
With the situation that came out, we know all the files of the Epstein files got released. Steve Tisch's name shows up. It has become very quiet after his statement that he shared. And we know the world in itself is kind of in a little bit of an upheaval at the moment. So that's kind of got pushed to the background. Do you foresee either the Giants themselves kind of doing something, maybe kind of helping push, I don't want to say push aside, but maybe move him away from the spotlight if they can? Or is there any kind of feeling that the NFL themselves may actually kind of do something a little later once we get through this part of it and let things die down and then they handle it?
I think what we're probably going to see is over the next maybe few months, his Steve Tisch's name will disappear from the team directory. I think that's probably the way it's going to go. There won't be a major announcement. I can't see them, drawing attention to it.
Sure.
I don't think anybody is going to force a sale, because you got to remember, Steve and his brother and his sister inherited the father's side. So
right.
Why would you punish, the brother and the sister, Jonathan and Lori, for any, reported misgivings or issues or decisions, if you will, that Steve made? So I think the thing that makes sense, if I'm the Giants and I were advising them, just quietly remove the name from the website. Don't make a fuss about it. People are on that site all the time. They're checking for changes to the coaching staff, to this, that, and the other thing. And eventually it'll get out. And I think that's the way they would probably handle it if they decide to make any kind of move.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. We've been talking about it, and you don't want to keep bringing it up because it's an ugly, heavy thing. But at the same time, it needs to be addressed at some point. But right now, with all the other stuff going on, though, let everybody know where they can find you best for the breaking news, and then let them know where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, so you can find me for breaking news. Obviously, I'm on X at Patricia_Traina. You can also find my written work on New York Giants on SI. We've got a ton, and I do mean a ton, of free agency stuff coming down the pipe. I just finished working on a salary cap piece that I'm going to publish after we get done with this program. The podcast, Locked On Giants, it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And as Eric mentioned earlier, I generally try to get a guest on once a week. I've had Cy on, once the Giants start signing free agents, I'm going to bring on beat writers who have covered those players so that we get a little bit more about them. So a lot of stuff. And then, of course, I have my own little, takes on the Giants cap. I did a salary cap series, a 2-part series a couple of weeks ago. So if you're curious about how the cap works, do check that out. And yeah, you can also find me on Instagram at Patty Traina. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on
Nice.
Reds. And we've got a Facebook page, New York Giants Maven, NY Giants Mavens.
Well, I can tell you other people do watch your podcast who aren't Giants fans. Because I was over a span of 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I had to be in a training for my day job. We were in trainings with Aslan training group. They do sales training, whatever. And this guy's kid is he's a sports guy, and they follow a different team. And he goes, "Oh, are you familiar?" Because he knew I also have a podcast. He goes, "Are you familiar with Locked On?" I go, "Oh, absolutely." He goes, "There's a Giants one too." And I before I could say it, he goes, "I think there's this person." Patricia, I go, yeah, Patty Traina. I go, no, I know she's going to be a guest on my show on Saturday. He's like, oh, no kidding. So it was pretty funny. So you are being watched by people who don't even follow the Giants.
Yeah, I still pinch myself because it's like, I always wanted to be a Giants reporter, and I still pinch myself that people read my stuff, that they watch me, and I'm grateful for it. Look, you don't have to agree with everything I say. That's fine.
Absolutely.
I draw the line when it gets personal with the insults and stuff like that. But I always welcome a debate. I don't profess to know everything. I mean, I'll give you my honest take. I'll tell you what I know. And, there are some things that I know that I can't put out there, but, I do try to do the job the right way. And I hope, enough people appreciate that.
Wow, absolutely. Eric, I know you go ahead and finish it off. You
Oh yeah, it's always great to see Patty. Patty and I met a long time
Yes,
ago.
I remember. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a quick story before I go.
Yeah.
When you instituted the login system, and I'm sure my login probably doesn't even exist anymore. I actually was one of the first 100 to sign up for that.
Oh, awesome. It's funny that when people get that number and they lose it because if you don't use your account for a long time, it gets automatically purged. They get mad but I had number 97 and I want it back. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. So yeah, the people that are the first 100 or the first 200 always seem to take pride in that for some reason. So
yeah, I think I was 94 or 96. I can't remember.
There you go.
I was in the 90s, and I was like, woo, I'm a part of the 100 club.
So with that, Patty, I'm going to let you get to your day. We're going to follow you. Anything big comes up, we'll look forward to seeing it, and we'll catch up with you again, as we move along in the process, if you're open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's always good to catch up with you. I appreciate you.
Awesome. All right, you have a great day.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right.
So you didn't trust me to get her off.
No, I did not. It's like, I'm sorry.
Look, I was trying to do that, and it was all right. I'm not going to get into it. All right, we got free agents to talk about. We're an hour and 20 minutes, and we don't have a lot of time. So
yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll throw something up there real quick because I just had some fun with it. I can see yours is a little more of a list thing.
We're not going to go through all mine.
No. Let's
throwing names up there.
And same with me. I just picked some to kind of target. It's really to start conversation, and we'll fill it in. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. So I just threw some stuff together here, and yes, I tell AI what to generate, and it generates it for me. So don't look at the numbers; they don't always match. I can only fix so much of it. That being said, Wyatt Teller is a name that keeps coming up. I've seen him in other areas. A little bit of an older guy, offensive guard. Again, Cleveland connection. So there is a bit of a connection there. I have a feeling. I do think they're going to do something with Raanan, whether they cut him or whether they drop his salary. I just think, what is the point of dropping the salary on a guy if you don't think he fits what you're going to do? And I just don't think Raanan fits what I think they're going to become. So it's not just about Matt Nagy. Greg Roman is really going to be the coordinator of the running game. And that's going to dictate to the offensive line coach what kind of lineman you need to fit that scheme. And I think you're going to go for guys who are tougher. They're physical guys they can count on, and they don't need to keep them for that long. So that's why I went Wyatt Teller here. But there are a few other offensive linemen. Just your thoughts, though, on the offensive linemen.
Well, Teller, Kolar, and Ricard to me are so obvious that I would be kind of surprised if the Giants aren't pursuing them. That doesn't mean they can sign them. Again, we don't have a ton of cap space. That's going to come into factor here. And the interest on these players to come to the Giants is all effect. They can go anywhere they want. But Teller has the connection to our current offensive line coach. Kolar and Ricard, Baltimore Ravens, both blocking assets. Ricard's a blocking fullback. And the one, the question we had with Daniel Bellinger is, and I understand where people are coming from, and I'm not saying we shouldn't re-sign him, but he's decent at a lot of things, but he's not really good at any one thing. Ricard's going to be is a better blocker as a fullback than Daniel Bellinger is going to be as a fullback.
So I'm going to call timeout real quick. I just want to. So I did throw the breaking news. It's breaking news only in that we talked about it just a few minutes ago, and I want to share it now. Okay. I think Jordan mentioned it a little bit. So according to Gary Myers, this is from 8 minutes ago. The Giants were never in on the Trent McDuffie trade. Okay. The Giants, and according to Gary, the Giants never talked to Kansas City about him. They believed that was coming out of Kansas City to try to up the price with somebody else. So according to him, the Giants were never in on the Trent McDuffie trade.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Okay. And then Kolar there are two tight ends coming out of Baltimore, and Kolar's the blocking tight end. Likely is the pass catching tight end. So I like your list here. I know you keep throwing Hollywood Brown here because of the connection too, and he's on my list as well too, and we'll get to that. But if I could see him being brought in, especially if Wandell leaves, but he's not my favorite player. I mean, the wide receiver market isn't great, and he's on my list as well. It's an obvious connection. So I like the names that you put together here. They make a lot of sense to me.
The thing with Hollywood Brown, it's twofold. One, he has the connection to Nagy. He has the connection to John Harbaugh. That's a dual track kind of thing.
Yep.
The one part that I have where I won't say misgiving about it, or I have a little apprehension about it, is he's not known as being the most sure-handed guy either.
Right. Correct.
But he also is a speed guy. So
right.
You already have that not so sure-handed speed guy on your team in Darius Slayton. I don't know that I agree with Patty's assessment. I have an odd feeling the Giants are, when they make some moves at wide receiver, I think Darius Slayton's going to be a post June 1st cut. I just don't see how you can bring, if you're really trying to change an organization,
right? How
do you bring a guy back who has been tied to moments of where something big could have happened and it didn't? And that's so take out the times when he's made big plays. They've generally been non-game affecting, or it's already been decided in one direction or the other. But when there were big plays to be made, I'm thinking back Washington 2020. You could go back even last year. I mean, there was a play over the middle. He just drops the ball. He comes up small at moments when you need it. And I just have a feeling that when you're a new staff, you don't want that tied. And he's been tied to what? 3 coaching staffs at this point.
Yeah.
It's time to move on. I think Hollywood Brown.
He is what he is, and I would get rid of him. I know if they get rid of him pre-June 1st, there's no cap benefit at all, but sometimes you just do it for a culture issue. I do want to reiterate what we've said before, but other people, we have a pretty good group joining us today, so they may not have heard this. Some people out there may be saying, why are you necessarily connecting players with coaches that when they were on other teams? And one is they know the player better inside and out. They'll know if they're a good guy to have in the locker room, if they're a hard worker, if they'll do the things the right way. But just as importantly, if you're trying to change the culture, and this goes back to as long as John and I have been following football, there's such a thing as the Parcells guy or the Tom Coughlin guy or even the Jim Fossil guy. People want to bring in their guys, and their guys will come in and be the representative of the coach in the locker room, trying to show the players how things are done. And the Giants have been doing things the wrong way for so long that Harbaugh's going to simply want to have some people in here that are examples of doing things his way. So they don't always have to be stars.
Exactly.
They don't always have to be starters.
Exactly.
So there are going to be players that Giants are going to sign, and people are going to go, why did we sign that guy? That doesn't make any sense. He's not very good. Some of it is just to get that guy in the locker room and be the representative of the head coach and say, this is how we do it. And this is how, and if you don't do it this way, you're not long for this team. You're going to be unemployed. So that's the connection. You're going to hear John and I repeatedly say, well, this guy was with this coach on this team. And it always works that way in football. It just does when you have a coaching switch.
And it's a debate that I've had with a few people on BBI, BigBlueInteractive.com, is when I bring up Charlie Kolar, they're like, Isaiah Likely's a better. First off, go back and read anything I've written. I never said Charlie Kolar is a better player than Isaiah Likely. However, the Giants do have a cap issue. Can they clear a ton of cap? Yes, we covered that in a previous episode, so I highly recommend go back and look at it. There's ways that they can clear a ton off. That said, even when you do, right, one of the big arguments I've had about the way the cap was run before and why it's a problem, even though you can adjust to it now, is you have to release players to get there, which means you've created a hole that you have to fill. So I gained cap room and I gained an open spot. So now I got to fill that spot. So some of the players you're going to get, Eric just said it very well, is they're not going to be stars, A, salary cap wise, B, they're there to bring a mentality. They're there to bring a consistency. And when you have multiple new coaches, and the Giants staff is pretty much all new coaches, you're bringing in a new philosophy. But the Giants also offensively, they have, for the first time that I've really seen, such a delineation between sides or roles. They have a run game coordinator. They have a pass game coordinator. They have the offensive coordinator. You have an offensive line coach. All those guys have different responsibilities, different areas of focus, and all of it is being installed new at the same time. So I need guys that know what's going to be installed or understand the bulk of it, and they can relay that to a bunch of guys who are coming in who have never seen it, who know nothing about it. So I think that's why it's important. Charlie Kolar, to me, I think is a guy that he's going to be tight end 3, maybe tight end 4, and I do expect the Giants to be 4 tight end deep. The other thing is, when we keep hearing about slot receivers, right, what do we always think of as far as the Giants? You think of, like, for us, it's Wan'Dale Robinson. If you take other teams, in the past, for like Brian Daboll, it would have been Cole Beasley, a guy like that. Kansas City slot receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster played the slot a lot for Kansas City. A little bit bigger. They want guys who are going to catch and can take the physicality in the middle. And I think a guy like him makes a lot of sense, and you're probably going to be able to get him on the cheap. Not saying they'll definitely do it, but that's kind of where I'm going to go for the moment.
And I'll keep pounding the table. I think they're going to want to slot people that block. If you're going to become a running football team, you don't want a little tiny guy out of the slot. You want somebody who's going to come across and try to take out a linebacker. And we'll cover that in the draft. And we talked about Jeremy Bernard, but there are going to be other people. Kolar could be the number 2 tight end on this league on this team if they're going to use a lot of 12 personnel. So, look, what we don't know is what does John Harbaugh think of Theo Johnson? And I suspect that they're higher on Theo Johnson than a lot of Giants fans who were upset with his drops last year. But Theo Johnson is a big, athletic guy who has a huge upside still. And he's very similar in style in terms of pass receiving to Likely, except he's a better blocker. So I don't know if Likely makes a lot of sense with the Giants, especially if you've got a deeper tight end class. But what they do need is a blocking tight end. And that's why Kolar, to me, makes way more sense than spending money on Likely. And I've seen conflicting information whether Likely was a big John Harbaugh fan too. I think he was one of the guys that might not have been crazy about Harbaugh, but I don't have any inside information on that. I've just seen some people say he was glad when Harbaugh left Baltimore, and other people say no, he was upset. I don't know where he falls on.
Yeah, it was a weird story that he threw a party, but then that was debunked. So I think
I don't know. I think
it doesn't matter. I will say one thing about Isaiah Likely is he, for all the physical talent, and he has a ton, he has a number of gaff plays in his seasons in the NFL, similar to Darius Slayton. Not so much drops, but where he just doesn't get both feet inbounds, where he could have scored the winning touchdown. He just missed. And again, it's minor, but I mean, you've got a guy in Theo Johnson who's more of that athletic guy. He's way more athletic than you probably think. But at the same time, I really think the Giants would like to get away from using him as more of the full-time two-way blocker receiver, have him be more of the receiver and move blocker if they can, and bring in another guy who could be like a Mark Andrews was there. That not so deep down the field, but in the middle of the field security blanket. So we'll see. The other guy to keep an eye on tight end wise, and I've thrown his name out there if we're going to go cheap, is Robert Tonyan out of Kansas City, formerly of Green Bay, because he knows the offense that they're going to be installing, or at least we believe he'll know the offense, and he's cheaper. And I think that's where they might.
But don't underrate Theo Johnson's vastly improved blocking last year. He is developing into a pretty good two-way tight end. His first year here, his blocking wasn't great. If you read size game reviews, his blocking really came on last year, and that's another reason why I think Giants fans are underrating him. I'm not saying you're going to be your blocking tight end. I'm just saying when you have a tight end who can block and catch, ideally we want Mark Bavaro back, but if you got a guy that can do both, it just opens up your offense so much more. I'm just going to throw some names. I'm not going to go through all these names.
Yeah,
some offensive linemen just to keep an eye on. If they do want to go away from center, there are a couple other options out there. I mean, go away from John Michael Schmitz. There's a couple other options out there. The tackle class down at the bottom is really, really thin, and that's one of the reasons I think the Giants are a little bit stuck with they might have to re-sign Illuminor, because the guys that are out there now, there are some left tackles out there I did not include on this list because signing a left tackle doesn't make sense for the Giants. Having a good swing tackle would be, but as we saw with James Hudson, those guys aren't cheap either. So the tackle class is really, these guys would be more placeholders. They would be probably a step down, other than Braden Smith. They'd probably be a step down from Illuminor. It's just, do you want to spend, what kind of money is Illuminor going to get? Is he going to get like $18 million a year? Is it going to be less than that? Who knows? There was a report yesterday from Forbes that what's this guy's first name? Not the magazine. I can't remember the account, but said he might be willing to take less money. But I don't know. That guy has a good track record in predicting that. The guard market's a little bit deeper, and if you notice, you've got some Browns on here. So you got Tevin Jenkins, and you got Joel Bitonio.
I believe Trent Brown re-signed with Houston. I believe.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I believe so. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Okay. I put this list together a couple of days ago.
Yes.
Too,
so Trent Brown has re-upped with Houston.
Okay. Was that recent?
It is within the last couple of days.
Yeah, so I put this list together 2 days ago, so I apologize.
Not necessary. Just real quick though, so it helps you to kind of think about the market. Trent Brown did a 1-year contract extension, which is worth up to $7 million. So he's a little bit on the cheaper end because of tackles, because he has an injury history. He does not fit every team because of his just massive size. It's hard for some teams that do a lot of movement. You're not going to get a lot of movement out of him. But anyway, so he would be off that list. But overall, you're highlighting just how thin the tackle part is, although I would add Taylor Decker to that. And then if you really want to think about Jedrick Wills, who's coming out of retirement, says he's recovered from his knee, is visiting other teams to try to see if anybody's interested.
Yeah, and again, these are the more of the quote unquote headliners, but it shows you this is not a great free agent class. Again, teams are doing a much better job of re-signing the players they want to keep. So the guys that hit free agency are generally, there's an injury issue, there's a talent issue, or there's an age issue. And one of the guys, for instance, probably the best of the group is Vera Tucker. But Vera Tucker has missed half the football games he could have played in the last 5 years. I think he's missed about 40 football games with a multiple. But if the guy's healthy, if you knew he was going to be healthy and not get hurt again, he's the best of the group here. But do you take a risk on him, and how much does he cost, even given the fact that he's been an injury prone player? But if you could tell me Vera Tucker is going to stay healthy, he's at the top of my list here, and he's probably a guy that teams would spend big bucks on too. So, but real quick, so notice that. So you've got 3 Browns on here. And notice that you've got Zion Johnson with the Chargers. Remember, Greg Roman was out there, and Zeitler was with a Harbaugh, and people are going to say, "Oh Christ, we're going to bring Zeitler back." But again, you're thinking at this point, I'm getting some guy to hold down the fort, protect Jackson Dart until we can get a better fix for some of these guys. So if you're going to get rid of a John Runyon because of salary and or he doesn't fit what you want to do, you might bring in some of these guys. And I would keep an eye on Parham with the Raiders. Is a guy Jordan Raanan has brought up. I would keep an eye on Vera Tucker if they want to go for shoot for the moon here and just take a little bit of a gamble. But I would take a look at Teller, which a lot of people are making that connection as well too. Older guy, but it's been to the Pro Bowl, and he would help this team a lot too. Now on tight ends and wide receivers, I don't think they probably go tight end. with a high end guy, but like again, Kolar's here, and to me, he's so obvious that I would be kind of surprised if they don't try to bring him in. If they were down on Theo Johnson, then you look at some of these other tight ends here. I don't think they're going to go in that direction. The guy from the Titans is a pure pass receiver. That's all he is. As is likely is more like that too. Njoku, he's a name that Giants fans remember because we were looking at him in the draft.
Sure.
But he's been one of those players that, again, comes up small sometimes in big moments, and I'm not sure you want to go that direction. Wide receiver class, this looks more impressive than it really is. I use this more as to show you the lack of depth here. It's much better than it was last year, but it's not a great group. And again, if you're going to bring in somebody to maybe just hold down the fort and be a veteran, you asked Patty about that. Do you look at somebody like Keenan Allen? He's at the end of his career.
He's way at the end. Though.
I know he's way at the end.
He would make Kenny Golladay look like he was coming in unbelievably fresh.
But the question is if you get rid of Slayton, you got to bring somebody in. I'm not arguing for him, and he's got the Greg Roman connection. I'm just saying that you're going to bring in somebody because they're not going to go. You don't see them making a big play for Alec Pierce, right?
I don't think they'll be able to the amount of money he's going to get. But I do think they're going to look trade wise, and I'll throw two names out there. Yep. Jordan Addison of Minnesota. I would keep an eye on a possibility there. And then when you kind of look at it, it's been linked to other teams, so I don't want to say that I've heard anything with the Giants, but it does make somewhat sense. Is Brian Thomas out of Jacksonville?
Okay,
because they're looking to offload him.
But I don't see Mike Evans coming here. I don't see Pierce coming here. Tariq Hill, I don't see that. I don't know how you feel about that. People are
God no.
People are speculating that Shaheed is going to follow Kubiak to the Raiders, who have a ton of cap space and actually need to spend it. So your next tier really is Daubs and Jennings. I don't want Deebo Samuel here, but I put that there because there are going to people that are going to say, why not him? But he's a guy that's really, really slowed down and really hasn't done anything since that big contract year he had.
And there's rumors that he's probably going to end up back in San Francisco.
And the only guy on here that might be flying under the radar is Jalen Naylor. And the reason is he's on a team that has two better options than him, and he may be a better player than people realize. Again, none of these guys are the answer. I'm just saying the wide receiver room is really bad, especially if Wan'Dale Robinson's gone and you don't believe in Darius Slayton. Our wide receiver room we need bodies in there. So Christian Kirk, maybe if you lose Wan'Dale especially too, but none of these, again, this wide receiver list, I kind of put this together just to give people an idea of it's not great. And you talk trade, John, but again, if the Giants are going to try to accumulate picks, they're not going to start wanting to trade them. I'm not saying they won't trade for somebody, but
I would assume a trade like that would involve Kayvon. That's what I was more thinking. Is Kayvon Thibodeau would be the player for player swap.
I just hope they don't get in a situation where, if you've noticed, teams have been marketing players out there saying they've been trying to trade players. A few days go by and then they cut them because there's no takers. I hope we don't run into that with Kayvon, because they need the cap space so desperately that we just don't outright release him.
Well, but again, the reason you would do that, and I'm glad they didn't do it with the Bears situation. Right. That contract was too much, but you also want to make sure, though, if there's a guy if I just go, if I don't trade for him, they're going to cut him. He's now got 31 options versus the one. If you trade for him, his option is to deal with you. So hopefully you strategically do it. Jordan Addison is young. He's got off-field stuff that I'm a little concerned about that you'd have to watch. Brian Thomas is a guy who's young, and I just think I just don't think I think he came in too hot early, and the expectation was he would stay up there, and that was too much expectation for him because he was the second guy at LSU. I mean, Neighbors was the star. Thomas was the second guy. So I think if he went to a different place, that would make sense. What I would look to see though is I do think it's going to be a veteran. I think it's going to be a guy. Allen, to me, I would have been all for it, except for the fact that I saw him play last year. The dude just cannot run routes anymore.
I get in a normal year, but this is what caught my eye too with him. He still had 88 catches for 800 yards. I mean, it sounds like I'm advocating for.
No. I know you're not.
What I'm saying is they've got to get somebody in here. He would be cheaper, and he certainly knows he's a veteran. That's the only reason, and he's way down on my list. I'm just saying,
sure.
If you're a Giants fan and you think the Giants are going to sign Alec Pierce, I don't think that's happening. Now, if they do, I would hope. It would be great if Alex Pierce was on this team. He averages 21 yards a catch, but the speculation he's going to get $25 to $30 million a year. The Giants don't have that kind of. We don't have that. We don't have. What's our cap space right now? It's are we around 10, 12? I don't know what it is, but we don't have a lot of cap space. Do you want to do defense?
Yeah, we'll go real quick. So let's take a look at that. I'm just checking one thing real quick here. Perfect. All right. So I just threw this together kind of quickly. You're not going to agree with some of these chat.
No, they're on my list. I mean, most of them.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So Calais Campbell's the one that I'm really starting to kind of warm up on. The Giants.
That's how you spell his first name?
No, that's the AI messed it up, and I changed it, and then I pulled up a different.
We were on a quality show here.
I know. I'm sorry. I was going fast when I was trying to load these this morning, and but Calais Campbell, I want leadership, size, all that stuff. I think he just brings a piece that they don't have. Everybody's talking about John Franklin Myers, and I included him because of that.
Or hires.
Oh my God, AI really messed with me on that one.
Is that what we're blaming, John?
That's it. I am, because that was so. But Leo Chanel is the one that keeps getting talked about. I just think he's really expensive. I think he's just really expensive. So I'm not sure this is the way to go. I think the Giants are going to look to make a splash. But I do think it's going to be at corner. But I think they're going to want a veteran. So I don't know if we'll get a true number one today, but a number one in the past. So somebody like a Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward came up as a possibility, as maybe in a trade piece. My worry about Denzel Ward, I don't care about how many games he's missed or not missed. He has a concussion history issue. And that one of the things I saw not too long ago, 3-4 weeks ago, was literally the words, Denzel's decided he wants to keep playing. Well, that's kind of scary to me if you had to come to that decision because of your concussion history. So if you go get a guy like that, you got to know that there is possibility you won't have him for very long.
Yeah, let's take a grain of salt with like what Jordan said about what we're seeing on X now. There's so much shit out there now. So we'll see. Look, the McDuffie stuff looks like it was shit. And that was coming from a reporter. So
let's get to yours because we're gonna wrap it.
Okay, so many of the same names. It's unbelievable. Campbell's 40 years old, and people are going to say, "Why the hell do you guys have a 40-year-old on your list?" He's still playing pretty well. So
he had like six. I think he had 6 sacks last year or something in that range, and he blocked a kick.
Yeah, and John Franklin Myers is probably outside our price range, but he's at the top of a lot of people's lists. Again, it's not a deep class. Before people go, it shows you the shallowness of the free agent market. Some of these guys, you're like, who? But Sebastian Joseph Day, because of the connection with our current defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. Inside linebackers, much deeper group, unlike the wide receiver group where it looked like I was higher on more. There are some very interesting names here. Devin Lloyd's going to get paid. I don't expect him to come here, but he's had a breakout year in his contract year, which does scare you a little bit. But Devin Lloyd's the best of the bunch in terms of second contract, still on the upswing of his career, his age, so forth. A lot of the same names. I don't expect them to go with somebody like Bobby Wagner who's some of these guys aren't going to want to come to sort of a quasi rebuilding team. I know the Giants aren't technically rebuilding, but some of them are gonna be looking. But I think Chanel makes a lot of sense. Again, the connection with the Chiefs is there. Remember, one of our new coaches is on the defensive side is also with the Chiefs. So but I would expect the Giants to sign at least one veteran linebacker. I'd be kind of surprised if it isn't one of the guys from this group, and then to draft one or two linebackers as well. I think the linebacker group is going to be completely redone, even if they sign Micah McFadden re-sign him on a 1-year prove it deal. I expect us to be pretty active and I think the early rumblings that we've heard that they are looking at linebackers as well. So I would be kind of surprised if it wasn't from this group. In terms of the corners and safeties, Jalen Watson to me is one of the few free agents out there that is very attractive to me and would probably get a big deal. Again, the KC connection there is our defensive backs coach was the safeties coach in Kansas City from 2021 to 2024. So he knows Jalen Watson inside and out. If they were going to make a big splash at corner and not give away a draft pick, I would keep an eye on Jalen Watson. A number of other names here. The fit has got to be there as well, too. It's got to be somebody who fits in with what the New York Giants want to do on defense. The big question mark is somebody like Tariq Woolen from the Seahawks, he's got all the tools you want, 6'4".
He's got size, yep.
210, runs like the wind, but you don't ever know what you're going to get from him. One play, he's fantastic. You saw it in the playoffs. One play, he's fantastic. And the next play, you're going, what the hell are you doing? But he was with McDonald in Seattle, who comes from the Baltimore system, and they want to run the Baltimore defense here. So is there a connection there with that? And same with Josh Jobe. So again, you look at the connections. It's not just even people are saying, well, what is our connection with the Seahawks? It's McDonald being the Ravens defensive guy now coaching in Seattle. It's going to be the same type of system that's here. So safeties, I only included these here if they do want to go and add a third safety and we're not able to resign Dane Belton and they want Newbin to play closer to the line of scrimmage. Who are some of the names that they might be looking at? I don't expect them to make a big play at safety, but I could be surprised. And I just wanted to throw some names out there as well, too. But overall, it's not a great free agent class, but they're going to have to fill spots. I would not be surprised if we sign guys that are not on any of these lists because they're cheaper and they're more under the radar guys. And it's almost like, and I don't want to make the talent comparison, but you remember when they signed James Hudson, that kind of like James Hudson, and you had to sort of find out who that was, kind of like that thing, guy that was a backup who might have been on a team where he was stuck behind somebody and you're taking a flyer on the guy too. So there are going to be guys that are going to be out there that John and I didn't mention that just maybe farther down on the best free agent list, but it's because of the situation they are on the team. So a backup player, an up and coming player that you might not have heard of, somebody who was even a guy that you just you don't even recognize his name. So I wouldn't be surprised by that too.
Yeah, I think and when last year for Hudson, the Giants were interested in Morgan Moses and then had to pivot when he wasn't available, and that became Hudson. I think a lot of that, there's going to be a lot of changes between now and Monday at noon, and even between Monday and Wednesday. Remember, the league year does not officially begin until Wednesday. Legal tampering starts on Monday, but the actual they are legitimately signed and count against the cap begins on Wednesday. Teams have to be under that number before the league year starts. So guys are still going to get cut and things are going to happen. Even trades aren't really done. They're not official. They're just announced right now, cannot become official until Wednesday. So no matter what happens, there's going to be some more. The Giants are going to move some other players. They're going to change some salaries. They're, other players from other teams. So this gives you a general idea. I would say with that, we've gone a full 2 hours with this. So I think, we'll probably want to wrap it up there. Eric and I are going to talk. I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off specifically to be available on Monday. I think maybe we can come on and be live, because I do think some signings are going to happen early. They might not be big, but I do think things are being talked about right now. Who's anybody kidding? Some guys already know where they're going. So
I expect we're going to hear some restructurings in the next couple of days too.
Exactly.
Maybe more cuts.
Cuts. And I did want to share, Gary Myers dropped another little nugget just a minute ago, in that he does not believe, based on everything he's heard, that the Giants will be shopping in the top end of the running back market. He does not think they will be in on Kenneth Walker. They're not.
That doesn't make sense.
But that they will be in, but they are still thinking about adding another running back. So I think a guy like an Isaiah Pacheco does become somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that whole Kenneth Walker thing, that never made sense to me. So I don't get that. Now, not to flip people out, I still think Jeremiah Love's in play.
I knew you were going to do it. You couldn't let it go on a happy note.
Again, people are going to say Eric wants Jeremiah Love. I'm just saying, if they want to run the football, and if Sonny Styles isn't there, he's got to be in the discussion. So at least it's trade bait. Maybe they can trade down. So anyways, on that.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up real quick, but I do want to throw this out there, and generally don't ever talk about other groups, but I'm going to talk about this one. Whoever Marshall Green is, if you are going to continue to share the stuff that Ricky posts on Big Blue Interactive, could you at least tag the fact that you got the information from Big Blue Interactive? Not the little picture at the bottom of I screenshot what he said, but actually share it like you fucking read it from somebody else's stuff before you share it on there like it's news for you, okay? It's kind of annoying. You kind of suck when you do that. So I'm just saying, don't do that shit. At least say where you got it. I never would take something for somebody else and go, hey, here you go, and then go at the bottom, here's a picture that was actually somebody. Say it. Say you got it.
The Marshall Green channel reminds me of those infomercials you used to see in the 80s and 90s. And when you turned on the TV, I can't remember the guy that used to, or like the ShamWow guy.
ShamWow. I always think I think of Marshall. I don't want to say his name specifically. I think of some of those channels like Johnny Woo selling his real estate. You too can have this boat just like me. And it was like I missed those 900 commercials. Those were awesome.
Yeah.
All right. With that said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, Jordan Raanan. Thank you, Patty Traina, for coming on. And we'll let you know when we're going to be on starting for next week and stuff real soon. But till then, hey, enjoy your weekend.
Get your Inside BBI merch here.
Thank you.
BBI merch.
Right here. Get your Inside BBI merch